Okay, so today I wanted to talk about transformation. Transformation is a word that when we hear it, we think of something really, really deep and esoteric and unique. And I want to talk about it today from the point of view that it's as natural as breathing. So everything transforms. From tiny seeds, we have fields of wheat, barley, and oats. And from a tiny seed, a mighty oak grows, as it said. A frog begins as a tiny tadpole or pollywog in the water, and it grows into a small or large size amphibious being, can travel anywhere. Flowers spring from tiny to large seeds, and bulbs grow into a profusion of colors and shapes and scents. And we grow from a tiny seed and egg in a mother's womb into an independent being and differentiate in form and function, as do insects, flowers, birds, and animals. We hear the word transformation or metamorphosis, and we think of something otherworldly, magnificent, or mysterious, like an alchemist changing lead into gold. But the transformation means to assume one's mature form, a true form, and function from an immature form. Except for the miracle of a witch's curse on a frog prince, which turned a frog into a person. If the beginning is a duck or a swan, transformation goes from a cygnet or duckling into a large swan or duck. If the beginning is a caterpillar, transformation goes into a mature form as a butterfly. If the beginning is a human being, we'll transform into a mature form of a Buddha when our Buddha nature at the core of our being comes into fruition. Transformation is a natural activity in living form, and maybe in what we think of as non-living forms as well. For example, it's said that mountains speak and change, but too slowly for us to hear. Around us, there's a whole world of changing forms and language that we're ignorant of, mostly because our thinking mind drowns it out. We also interpret sound of any kind as noise, and we stop thinking. We don't see it as communication, so even though we hear it, we don't really listen. Language of silent forms of body and object are eloquent and informative, mixing with noises of other sounds to form constant communication. Even musical ways of expressing happen that way. Watching an eloquent dancer doesn't need music to perceive the language being spoken as a transformation in motion. The same is true for a quiet body in repose, a laughing child, a look, a smile. Whatever the means is, we are privileged to be in the presence of much more information than we consciously perceive. And such information of reality we can use at any time to help ourselves live a life that we'd like to live, bound by the precepts of good behavior, and turn outward from that to help others. Like everything in this self-made world, all things wither and die. We grow old in body and mind, but something else happens within us at the same time. A profound metamorphosis of spirit takes place. As we grow older, we look outside less and rummage around more inside, and we spend much of our time rummaging around in past experience only if we are resistant to change. But there is a universe inside, and we begin to wander in it more and more as we grow old on the outside and let more of our experience from inside and outside into our consciousness. Our thinking and emotions become enriched by our discoveries, but they're not easily understood or expressed, even when we receive them. And often the experience sits quietly inside until something triggers an alert mind in us, and we study our inner discoveries again and again. All the while, they integrate into everyday behavior without our explicit knowledge. That's the good side of rummaging around inside. The imperfect side of that, of rummaging around in the inside, that is in the dark, is that we often get waylaid by old karmas of anger, resentment, greed, foolish perceptions of reality, or whatever, if they are still hanging around unnoticed inside. So we continue to practice, whatever our age, in order to separate at all times the gold from the dross, or the wheat from the chaff. We don't want to go through all of the difficulties of changing, such as we have been doing, only to find ourselves lost in old karma, hiding out in our interior. No matter how old or practiced we are, we don't want to confuse true with false. We don't want to be sabotaged by ignorance of the past. If we stay alert as the body withers on the outside, a revolution of dynamic perceptions begins to take place in the interior, and each one of these perceptions change us in a way we don't understand, and they are more difficult, each one, to integrate within. So we have to keep practicing in order to do it. First of all, to understand it. We begin to actualize the teachings we've learned, not completely consciously, but present nonetheless. We understand that it's happening, all these changes within, but not how or what or why. Keeping the interior free from corruption becomes our biggest task as we grow older. We are unaware of what change in understanding. We are unaware of real change in understanding as it enters our consciousness in bits and pieces. And we finally put it together at once, long after all the pieces are present. Things you may wonder about suddenly find a home in us when we are soft enough within to integrate them, and sharp enough within and without to realize what they are. That's it. Thank you. Questions? Anyone? Oops, wait, Peter's coming over.
Watch his toes, watch his toes.
Okay, good. Do you have any questions or some, yeah, Mark?
Are we actively using or discriminating mind to decide what's not good and what's good in this process?
I think you have to use it a little bit, but I don't think you have to rely on it. I think probably when something isn't right, you feel it much faster than you think about it. And when something feels very right, it integrates within us very quickly. But we don't have to think about it, really. When something starts to connect inside and we don't feel good about it, we know it faster than we can think, well, that's not so good. And then you have to dislodge it in some way, mostly by just being aware of it. That's what I think.
So you're saying it's like perception, that we're paying attention and we're not actively weighing things out in our little computer mind, right?
Yeah, you don't really have to use your computer mind, your thinking mind that much, but it doesn't hurt to use it if it helps. If you feel something's not right, it doesn't hurt to turn a laser-like mind on it, with thinking about what is wrong with this feeling. Why does it not feel right when it looks right? And then you have to think about it and look at it more carefully, look at it. I don't think you have to think about it so much, because personally, when something is not right in you, you automatically know it. You can feel it. It's like trying to put something square in a round hole. It just doesn't fit, and you can try it because you think it looks like the same color and all. But then finally, you know it just because your physical experience tells you it's not good before your thinking experience does.
So it's perceptional, and then it's could we say it's more like a refinement rather than a, decision-making thing that we're going with?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
That as we refine our perceptions and we guide ourselves into different areas, not so much of this isn't bad, good, correct? It's more finding the flow, finding how things fit, how they join up harmoniously. And when we pursue illusions or delusions, we always have a wonderful rise and then a wonderful drop that lets us know we were deluded in the first place. And that's what we're eliminating, right?
I think,
Would you say that's one of the things that we're doing there?
I think when something comes up from the inside, it's not something that we can sit down and dissect clearly like you could if it was on the outside. It's just something that feels right. And sometimes, for example, when I was painting in there and I would go in and I would paint something that felt really good at the moment. And when I looked at it later, I knew it wasn't right. I don't know how I knew it. I just knew it was not right where it was, and I would get rid of it. But when I did it, it felt right. And so I think we train and develop our senses by finding out through mistake after mistake what fits and what doesn't. I don't think it's a question of you can think it out and avoid problems with your thinking mind, because you have to go through the problem of finding out that it just doesn't work where it is. And it's not a question of everything has a perfect place. It's that you're growing inside, you're changing. Everything about you is going through some kind of big change. And the parts that come in don't fit maybe at the exact moment, but do fit later. And so it's just trial and error all the time with the interior. I don't think it's that easy.
It sounds to me like you can only find it in the moment because, well, you decided on, that felt great, what I just painted, but then there's another moment and then it's not right for that moment.
No, it's not that the moment was different, it's that the mistake was made. The action was not a good action. And so when I accepted it, I thought, oh, this will be a good action. And then I realized this was not a good action. And then I tried to get rid of it somehow and remove it or change it or move it in some other way. That's what I think. It's all trial and error inside. And whatever we do from the outside is always something you can see clearly and work. But from the inside, it's only a personal growth that takes place. And it grows by things that happen, things that you suddenly realize, things that you connect that were always sitting around inside and you didn't quite know what to do with them. And then one day it does connect, but it may not connect for a long time. It's just you hear things in teaching, you see things in teaching, you experience your own experiences, and they're all sitting around in a muddled form inside. And you have to go in and pick and choose, but you don't do that with your head. It's just 1 minute you understand something and suddenly you grasp it, and because who knows why? I don't know why. It's just 1 minute it didn't make sense, and the next it suddenly does.
I truly believe in the moment, and I truly believe that's the artistic process. When we talk about this, it's always an artistic process.
It always feels like an artistic
Yes.
process, because it doesn't feel like it's something that you can just sit down and work out, because it doesn't work that way. At least for me, it does. Maybe for somebody else it might, I don't know.
I don't know either. I don't work methodically either. That's why I'm right on the same page with you, Jane.
I feel like whatever we take in on the outside will sit around inside unless we delete it in our mind right from the start. It will sit around inside, and one day it will just either get thrown out with the trash, or you'll suddenly realize, wow, wait a minute, what is that? And realize it was something important. So, anybody have anything to say to that?
No.
Oh, Phil.
Thank you, Jane. You mentioned the word, I think, corruption.
Yes.
at one point. Could you elaborate what that term?
Yeah. Once we start rummaging around, we have a lot of temptation of one kind or another, and a lot of times we aren't even aware that it is, but it's like what we're talking about now. You may think something was fine when you received it, and then it's not fine afterwards when you realize it doesn't work with anything. And it's a kind of corruption in your system. And if it's based on anything like greed, hate, or delusion, which is the biggest problems we have all the time, then it seems like to keep ourselves alert, we have to be on the extra alert to keep ourselves from being corrupted inside. It's very easy to think, like, I've made paintings before that I thought were just great, and when I looked at them, I thought, did I make that? That's really terrible, How could I have thought that was a good painting? It's like we can deceive ourselves really easily. So it's just a question of not being fooled by our own thinking mind and our own wishful mind. So corruption is like, for at least as far as I'm concerned, the older we get, the more dangerous that is, because it's so easy to be fooled when you get old, and you don't want to miss out on things. And so you take things that really don't matter, really aren't healthy, or really aren't good for you, and you finally realize it when it doesn't mesh with anything else. But you can take it in and even think, oh, this is really beautiful, and then look at it later and say, what was I thinking, So, yeah, corruption is the biggest problem, I think, for people my age anyway, or any age maybe.
Mine too.
The more you rummage around inside, I think the more that corruption is a possible danger. And so you have to be really strict with yourself about, what is acceptable, what isn't. And you really have to, from my point of view, rely on your understanding of the precepts to keep that, free inside. And the freer you keep inside, the less confused you are by the outside, I think.
So that's interesting. Thanks, Phil, for asking that question, because it was intriguing to me too. This whole notion of having to watch for something building up in you, right? And it seems like that's a very involved practice, meaning it feels attached.
I could see why it might seem that way. It is something you have to be aware of more than you have to spend your time doing. It's just you have to be aware when something isn't right, to note that it isn't right, and when it's corrupting of other things inside, you have to experience it either the hard way or figure it out ahead of time. Or my experience has always been trial and error. So if it comes in, it's easy to be fooled by greed, hate, or delusion, because they come in such subtle forms I think the older you get, because you're aware of the surface type, but you're not aware of things that waylay your mind when you're not expecting it. And so it's a process of not so much making a whole new practice as just being alert.
I just wonder if it becomes a policing activity and then it takes over.
It can.
In which case it would be not the right thing to do.
I agree, it would not.
So how does one find this balance?
Again, by trial and error. That's when you find that you're getting rigid, you realize you're on the wrong track. And so you start softening your interior and getting rid of the extra that you keep piling up, trying to prove something is so or not so.
So what does the corruption have to do with this theme of transformation?
What does what?
Corruption have to do with the theme of transformation?
Transformation is taking place no matter what, even in one breath to another. But it can't take place if it's corruption. If you corrupt your interior, you pardon.
There's one good.
No water, that's
Do you have one?
There you go.
I got some water, thank you. That is a good question, actually. I wanted to answer it right, from my point of view.
I think we have a question over here.
Okay, 1 second then, please. I think that transformation of our whole mind and body that takes place in a natural way can be corrupted by the ordinary acts of, say, anger. Say if you get really angry at somebody, stop the change in your body by that. You fix everything with one act of anger. And there's a saying that one act of anger can wipe out a kalpa of good merit. And that's probably true, that it's, for me, the lack of change is what we don't want to happen. We want everything to keep flowing and moving. But things like anger, greed, and hate, and any kind of thing like that freezes us in a way that stops real change from going on. It's like damming up a river. And all you have to do is get rid of the dam, get rid of the blocks. And you can do that just by changing your attitude about something, changing your feelings about something. So like you were talking about watching yourself when you got angry and how that can change the whole system of happening. That was a kind of metamorphosis in action. It was moving. You were literally cleaning out the area. So that's what I think is corruption is really important, and paying attention that we don't get waylaid by our natural instincts to have and to hold and to all the other stuff. And anger especially, or hatred or any kind of thing that freezes our interior. So the more we keep it loose, the more we allow this change to go on. And we're always in emotion, we're always in some kind of flux, is how I see it. And that flux is important to making us whole as we are. We don't know where we're heading, and at least I don't. And yet I can feel the change happening all the time. But when I got angry about something or felt like the painting that I was doing was not good enough, the painting froze. I couldn't really work anymore. So it's everything. You can see everything around you freeze. You can see relationships freeze. Your own activities freeze. All the things you want to do freeze until you break the dam and let the natural flow go on again. That's what I think. So corruption is really important, and keeping our interior free of any kind of corruption so that things look like they're real when they aren't. That's what
Sandy, before you, Gavin, is Nick Gavin?
Gatlin.
Gatlin, it is Gatlin. Okay, Gatlin, what's your question?
Garvin?
1 second.
Oh, I thought you said Sandy.
No, 1 second, Sandy. Gatlin has a question here.
Oh. Okay.
It seems like you're implying that there's a healthy amount of doubt that we should carry along with us when when trying to lash on to this is the truth, this is right, this is what is good for me. And I just wanted to ask, how do you refrain from completely believing in something when it occurs, even if it may feel right or analytically seem right, so that we don't identify with it or attach with it or claim that this is true from here on out, because it may change, and that latching on maybe resists the change that will always be arriving and becoming.
Any kind of clinging or latching on is gonna, dam up the river. So the best thing is, even if you understand something, is to let it go as fast as you get it. Because if you don't, you're immediately trying to establish a truth of your own. So when anything, say, a doubt is good, it's very healthy, and at the same time, it can be a dam in the river if it's rooted on too much. So whenever you discover something, and even if it's real, let it go as fast as you can, because the actual final change, whatever it is, if there is one, you'd have no idea what it is. And something may be true at this moment and not true later. So you don't know the actual momentum and change that's taking place in the end, because all of it for us is mostly in a non-understood way. So don't latch on even to any truth, whatever it is. Just leave it sit there and keep on paying attention. Stay with your moment rather than trying to establish rockstones of something. So don't hang on to anything, not even a truth.